We have a love and hate relationship with the word sustainable. Mandy and I are going to dive into what that word really means for us. How do we create long-term, truly sustainable programs for our clients? And where the word sustainable has kind of been a bit of a cop-out for the word comfort zone for so many people. And we bring this up with love because we want to highlight where you keep yourself stuck, because we won't go through a season of what's required to get the result you're really after. And this is going to be relevant to any sort of struggle with an autoimmune condition, if it's a fat loss season, if it's trying to get through a particular work phase, it's gut issues, all of the stuff we work with every single day. The word sustainable is something that we are striving for, yet combating at the exact same time. And I want to break down that nuance. And I think the perfect place to do that is a podcast. So, Mandy, you had a chat with a lady earlier this week that was in this spot. And actually two examples, which were kind of the A and the B. The one who was like, right, ready to lock and load, time to get uncomfortable so that I can get past this issue, versus the one who's struggling with the same issue, but the word sustainable has actually become the roadblock rather than the outcome.
Yeah, super interesting. Very similar situations actually, and we had this discussion because this word sustainable came up, because, with certain conditions, and this one was particularly around gut related stuff, we do need to go a little bit stricter for a time in order to get a certain outcome, and it can feel unsustainable, quote unquote. But that's the goal. That's the goal, is to get it unsustainable, get that change happening so that you can then have more freedom in the long term. And so this term sustainable come up, and the lady was like, well, it just doesn't feel sustainable. It feels very restrictive right now. And I was like, okay, so how are you feeling? Is it good? She said, no, I don't like how I'm feeling. I'm like, do you want to sustain how you're feeling right now? No, I don't. I want to change it. Therefore, the actions can't be about sustainability yet. That's actually something that comes next. What comes now is the actions that create the change that get you to the place where you're happy to then sustain. And I think where sustainability holds people back is we're so focused on having it now rather than actually getting something we do want to sustain for the long term. And that's actually going to require some effort and some change. And it was cool to be able to share with her an example, because I have had another lady recently who's had similar gut issues, and we'd gone through all of the basic layers and these issues were still showing up. And when we dug into her history, there was sort of like 20 years of digestive upset there. And it was quite significantly impactful on her day-to-day life. And I said, look, we actually did some stool testing and it came back and we saw what was wrong. And I said, look, we can address this, but it's going to take sort of 8 to 12 weeks of quite strict plan around food and supplements and all of that for us to really get to the bottom of it. Are you prepared to do that? And she said, yes, I want to go. She knew that it wasn't going to feel sustainable. She knew it was going to be a bit uncomfortable, a bit hard. But to her credit, she's done it. And, the change has been dramatic, like significant changes for her. And now she's at a place where she's quite comfortable, and we're bringing all those foods back in slowly. She's able to eat more variety than she's been able to eat for years without symptoms. And she wouldn't have got there if she had wanted to stay sustainable from the outset. She only got there because she was prepared to get out of her comfort zone. So it was a really nice kind of hopeful story for someone stuck in that, needing to do the hard thing, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, there's two ways I go with that word restriction when someone brings it up on the call. The first one is just blatantly saying yes and saying like you've been unrestricted for a long time and now it's time to dial things in and really create some structure. And I think that sort of thriving within the window of like focus is usually something that someone needs, right? Like if you ask Google Maps like where to go, they say this direction, not here's 10 ways you can go, you choose, right? We want to give you one path and say let's lock and load so we get the outcome. But the other part that I prefer to lean on is what makes this restrictive? Because if we've given you a guide or a plan that has refined the foods that you focus on in order to feel as good as you can, there's one person that can say this is restrictive and I'm missing out on life and X, Y, and Z to make up this big story of poor me. And then the next person can say, wow, I didn't realize how much quality, how much flavor I could get out of these ingredients, or how much energy I could improve by just simplifying my lunch or whatever it might be. So that it's no longer this big list of all these different ingredients that we can't pronounce. And it just comes back to good old whole foods that are simple to eat and you feel good on, right? Like our goal is not our 800 calorie plans. It's not to starve you throughout your day. Like our clients are not starving. So when I use a word restrictive, I would look at that and say, well, this isn't actually restrictive because you're fueling your body plenty for what you need to function on a day-to-day basis. We're just clarifying the ingredients that your body fuels best on. And I think that's a real relationship with food, a real tackling the story that is coming up with that client, because
Mhm.
they could be getting in their own way fundamentally based on the story they're telling themselves about the plan they're following rather
Mhm.
than the plan itself, right? And I think that's an important part as a coach, to be able to shift from just the prescriptive nature of this is the right plan for you versus how we're going to make sure that you can adhere to the plan and enjoy the results. Because frankly, you can be slapped in the face with the result you wanted, yet still have a story as to why that was hard, that you missed the result entirely because it
Mm.
was quote unquote restrictive. So a bit of a side tangent for me, but it does come back to the word sustainable, because sustainable is as much a mindset as it is an action.
Mhm.
Because if I'm sustaining a certain body fat, right? I want to keep myself in that sort of 10 to 12 body fat percentage. For me, I'm not someone who's naturally lean, so it does require a bit more focus than the average person. Um, and I find that at times I'm going to have to be a little bit hard on myself to be like, hey, just the one cheesecake, not 10, right? And would you call that restrictive? No, I'd say I'm still enjoying the food, but I'm being mindful of like, I've got to have a limit or I'm going to look like the average bloke. And the average bloke is very overweight, right? So I do need to do something out of average in order to look out of average. And I think there's actually pushing back on that whole mindset thing of like, oh, I just want to be able to drink with my friends and I want to be able to do this, that, and the other. I'm like, amazing. But if you're the average of your current friends right now, what's that body fat percentage? Oh, it's
Yeah.
38% or it's 45%. Well, let's start with a highlight of how can we get the best out of these friendships without the same body fat percentage. And I think being
Mhm.
mindful of the decisions you make, I'm not demonizing alcohol is the only problem here, but it's the decision making and the story process behind this is restrictive. Really, you're still eating high quality food and you feel amazing in your day. What part of that is restrictive?
Mm. I think that's a really interesting point because, and I've had this conversation with quite a few people, that if you view the normal food culture now of, a couple of glasses of wine every night and multiple meals out of each week and all of these sorts of things as well, that's just balanced and normal. Then a change to less alcohol and more high quality foods and homemade foods and stuff might feel restrictive, but it's also what you need in order to achieve what you're wanting to go. And like you say, it's not restrictive. Like that's how you and I eat, and it doesn't feel restrictive. That's how our clients are eating, and it's not restrictive. It is actually interesting and tasty food. It's the lens through which you look at it. Like if you're eating KFC every week and then suddenly you're not, you might feel like you're being restricted from KFC, but like that's not a restriction you should be like fighting against.
Mm.
Um, and I
Just to push on that, Mandy, to go the other direction. If I could say you can only eat KFC for the next week, that is still technically a restriction. But based on
Yeah.
all of the societal norms of what restriction deems, as soon as I have a chicken salad, people freak out. If I'm having
Yes.
KFC every lunch, it's not restrictive, right? So,
Yeah.
in regards to the variation of meals, right? People have the same two pieces of toast for breakfast. They have the same scone and coffee for mid morning, and then they have the KFC for dinner. They might have 80% of their meals, which look exactly, obviously, this is a bad example, but like people absolutely eat this for every day. So as soon as they say, cool, let's just swap out the KFC for steak and potato and just eat that every day instead, they're like, oh, this is restrictive. I'm like, dude, you only had KFC before. Now we're just swapping out the ingredients. So the actual
Mm.
variation is exactly the same. It's just a different food that fuels you better. And I think that's
Yeah,
at
yeah.
least shows you that highlight of sometimes that story that you provide around how this is now limiting was
Mm.
actually just we changed the food you're eating. We didn't reduce the amount of variation
Yeah, we see that with breakfast a ton, eh?
all the
People
time.
have
Yep.
eaten peanut butter toast for the last 35 years, and
Yep.
then you say, let's get some more protein in there and move towards an omelet. And it's like, well, I
And then
need
suddenly I need seven
to.
different breakfast options. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, eat eggs for the next 35 years, and then we.
Well, maybe not.
The
Um,
other thing that I think there though, Ollie, is actually sometimes that where we're looking for variety and sensation and interest in our food is because we're uncomfortable in our body. So
mhm.
we're not restricting our food. We don't want to be restrictive in our food because we're feeling restricted by our body. And we are. We're restricted by our body because our health is terrible and our energy is low and our body fat percentage is up and all of these other things. What if you swap that around? Eat the food that fuels your body, feel great in your body so you have no restrictions there. Then that motivation to keep doing the thing is actually there and it doesn't feel restrictive at all. Like I don't feel restricted by the food I eat. I feel like invigorated by it because I get to show up with the energy and in a body that I'm comfortable in.
Yeah, look, this is a juicy little topic, but I was thinking about this a lot yesterday. If I have a decent amount of sun, I walk enough in my day, and I generally am not stressed out or I like the people I'm around, I can have like as an example, like tuna for only a tuna can for every meal, and I could still be absolutely fine with my day because for that exact reason you've talked about, which is there's stimulation from so many other aspects of my life. I like my life and I
Yeah.
feel good, so I don't need that stimulation from food.
Mm.
If I hate the work I'm doing, I've got a low mood all the time, I'm sleeping like crap, I'm watching these crappy shows, and I now need all of the stimulation from food. Well,
Mm.
address the lifestyle component and don't find the happiness at the bottom of an ice cream tub, right? Like that's a big kind of statement, but it's amazing how much that's highlighted in certain clients, right? There's an awareness of if you're at the absolute capacity of your stress threshold, then the best health journey for you there is taking control of your calendar, building a no muscle, and creating some wiggle room in your day. I think either you or Mandy or Fran literally just put up a post on this of like create more threshold in your day, like just more room, more
Mm.
margin. Because
Mm.
if you give yourself that little bit of breathing room in your day and you go, what am I going to do with that 30 minutes? Like, what a luxury that is to just be like, what am I going to do for me today? Whereas
Yeah.
most people just go from task to task to task to obligation to meeting to pick up kids to whatever, that they never even ask that question for like 6 months, right?
Mm.
And I think that's the reason that food now becomes an escape is because you literally don't look after yourself. So, again, without going full life coach on you, it's worth looking at your total resilience factor of the day. If that lunch always needs to be the fancy new taco because you've hated your morning. Well, what if we went for a little walk before lunch? You actually felt good by getting 10 minutes of sun because, frankly, we are solar panels with emotions. And then your
Mm.
lunch didn't have to be, sparkling and spontaneous because you got your spontaneity or your stimulus from something else.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
actually
think it's a
use this as
mix,
we're way down this tangent now. I think we need to keep no, we keep going. No, but one more thing. I use it actually as a it's a marker point in a way. So if I get to the end of the week and I'm like, because I don't drink that much, if I'm like, man, I want a wine or a gin, I'm
Yeah,
like, that's a sign.
it was a week.
That's a
Yeah.
sign that I went too far. It's not a sign to drink. It's a sign to pay attention to what did I not keep in my week, or where did
Yeah.
I jam too much in and not have those areas of margin.
That's really
Um,
good. Like if you look at this as like a societal thing of like, oh, I need a drink on a Friday. It's just that classic example of like you were so under recovered for the whole week that your body's just crying out to like slow down a bit, right?
yeah.
And I think we lean into that and we normalize that as I need a drink on Friday. We don't ask that second question, which is exactly what you said, being
Mm.
well, why are you at that point by Friday? Like if you just took that little bit of pause, like I did this morning, Thursday or Wednesday morning, I tend to go for a walk or change my workout a little bit. So it's not necessarily a sleep in, but maybe just a slightly slower morning. And on those weeks, it means that by the time I get to Friday, there's no, I need a drink or I need to
Mm.
have a burger. It's like, it's Saturday tomorrow already. Like it's kind of like, it's
Yeah.
just another day that I've kind of added in. And that's a combination of enjoying the work you do and the people you surround yourself with, I'm sure. But the ability to check in on your total body battery, to use a Garmin term, a nice one to check in on. And I literally put the post up this morning of that, of
Mm.
you don't need to book a holiday to pause and breathe. And I
Mm.
think just using that opportunity before we even look in, the whole sustainable tangent we are going down,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's such an important part of it is the story you place on yourself on why you can't do something, why the day is too busy, is probably part of the resilience issue towards leaning in and truly finding 110%.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's the key point to bring it back around to the sustainable thing is when you first start out on this journey, what you think is sustainable is actually sustaining you where you are right now, which is not where you want to be. Therefore, we need
Mhm.
to go to that 110%, go hard, find the place where you want to be. And those new habits and all of that that have to come in, they're going to feel sustainable because the more you do them, the more they become just what you do. And I think humans are so adaptable in that. We think what I do now is what I'll always have to do, but it isn't. We can change, and we see it all the time. You were
Mhm.
talking about someone this morning who's felt that restriction on the gut reset initially when we take out some of the foods to test them for people. And now he's like, I could eat like this forever.
Mm.
Like it becomes your new level of normal, and then it becomes sustainable because you've actually just learned how to do it.
100%. Let's use an example of weight training because good old Ollie wants to bring in some dumbbells. If you were to squat 80 kilos on a squat, right, you would have to find failure and push to that new level to make 100 kilos your new normal, right? And it's that classic kind of pushing to that threshold beyond your current comfort zone in order to get stronger, right? And I think regardless of building back that autoimmune resilience, building back, trying to strip off some body fat, trying to improve your business and get past a key threshold of growth or chaos or team to kind of build that new rung. We all do it in some area of our life already. So just associate with that with the area you keep ignoring. Of you do that in work and you say, I just need to get this through this next 2 seasons of chaos and really push through and achieve X, Y, and Z to hit my new marker. If you approach fat loss, you approach your autoimmune condition, your gut health issues, your fat loss as that same mindset of I just need to push through this, not survive through it, because that's just copping out. You want to lean into that and make the most of the action items of how do I make this a successful 2-month season so that this, that, and the other happens, right? So we talk through breaking our exercise down into potentially a strength season, a fat loss season, maybe a fitness season, so that we're not trying to do this weird blend of everything together. We are saying for this next 2 months, I want you lock and load, right? And that might feel like 110%, right? That is saying no to that extra drink of alcohol, or the extra Twinkie, or the night out, or I love using the word Twinkie, even though it's
Like,
totally
what are
American term.
Twinkies?
It's like a, I don't know, like a savory. It's like a crappy processed food in America. Anyway. So there's going to be a little bit more discipline required in that phase to be like, oh, yeah, I kind of like a drink. And on my normal week, I would have that one there. I would go out with my friends on a Friday night and go to this barbecue, or I'd have that burger on the Saturday. And you'd be like, no, I'm actually going to really lock and load and not do it for that time period. So yes, it is 100% discipline in that period, but it's much better. And use the gut health phase as an example, right? Like if we're trying to truly fix a gut, it requires at least that 30 days of rebuilding that gut lining in order to kind of get to a level of resilience that we can start to tighten up those gut junctions. Now, if we're just kind of throwing in a little bit of cream here and a little bit of cheese and a little bit of nightshades, if that's a trigger, like whatever the thing is for you, you never get to that 30 days of true function, because you're always just like, when it's just about to fix it, you just throw something in that wobbles the boat a bit, right? And if we can bring that awareness to really truly going 110% so that you can go 80% down the line. And your client example before is perfect, which is now that we've got to a point that her gut issues are not constantly flaring her up, she can have a burger and be like, I'm not going to do that every day, but I actually feel pretty good now. That 100% does happen, right? And I think a lot of people will look at that and like, oh, I'm never going to have a burger again. And I'm gonna say, if you always dabble at 90%, yeah, you're gonna keep having these issues. But if you do 110% and lock and load for 2 months, we can fix these issues, and you can damn well enjoy that burger.
Yeah, and that's where sustainability actually becomes the word that I like.
Yes.
So in the initial outset, this is where the tension is, right?
Yeah.
Is it's not that the word is wrong, it's how it's used is wrong.
Yep.
In the initial outset of anything, sustainability is not the appropriate word. Like finding the answers, change, all of that stuff, lean in, or learn, all of that is the right answer in that moment. That ultimately leads to sustainability, because the goal is not to keep someone restricted for forever. And I think this is something that I'm quite big on, because I see a lot of people who have worked with many practitioners before, and this is not to dig on other practitioners, because everyone's learning and developing processes and whatnot, but very often a plan is given that is quite restrictive, and it needed to be to get the result, but there was no follow-up process of where this leads to. It's just put someone on low FODMAP and you'll have to do this for forever, where it is the exact opposite of my goal. My goal with any client, whether it's gut or autoimmune or fat loss or anything, is to go into that season of focus to achieve the goal you wanted to have, and then bring it back to something that feels, more sustainable, that you can do long term, that's enjoyable, that actually gives you more freedom. And like you said, it's so important for those gut issues or those autoimmune issues. And my analogy, which is kind of gross, is like if you have a wound and you just keep picking the scab off all the time, and it can never heal because you just keep touching it and picking at it. And it's the same with the gut stuff. Like, just leave it alone for a bit, give it 30 days, go a bit hard on yourself, and come out the other side with a gut that's actually a whole lot more resilient, so you can have some of those things.
100%. Yep. You can tell we're fiery today about this. Just got off squads. We're in a great space to kind of keep this front of mind. But look, what you said just before we jumped on the call was kind of the whole reason for this topic, which is, if someone says it isn't sustainable, yet what they're currently sustaining is somewhere they don't want to be, then something unsustainable is required to get them out of that space. And I think the whole, said a different way, you have to go 110% i.e. the definition of unsustainable because it's more than you can currently sustain, to
Hmm.
get to a point that does become your 100% or even your 80% that you can sustain, right?
Yes.
And the same way of, all of those functions we were talking about, it's just getting out of your comfort zone before you're forced to stay there. That's frankly
Yeah.
what it is. And I think being able to get uncomfortable is again one of those things we could go down a big old tangent about. I've done some really deep mindset calls on this whole actually seeking discomfort as a
Mm.
form of value, of fulfillment, of satisfaction, right? Like I was thinking about it this morning of down in Queenstown, I've done a helicopter flight over certain mountains. I can't remember what they're called, and it looks nice and it's very nice from the hills. But if you hike up that damn thing, which takes you 3 hours, and then you see the same view, you like it more because you've had to work hard to get there, right? So
Yeah.
it's a really good example of like how many times in your life have you been had to work for something really hard and then achieved it and really appreciate it for the journey to get there or the character built or
Mm.
whatever the value attained is,
Mm.
versus being given something and it's not really achieved the same amount, right? So
Mm.
even frankly, the difference between getting something for free, right? I'll give a resource to someone for free and they won't use the damn thing. And then I'll get them to pay for a program. And then they're like, I value this now. I had to pay for the thing and now I
Mm.
use it. It
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
how much that discomfort, whether it's monetary or whether it's energy or whether it's some other resource that I have to use in order to attain something, it does increase your value of it. And I think
Mhm.
I don't know where I even started there, but that ability to, um, I guess, build that awareness of if I'm trying to achieve a target, I need to go through that period of enjoying getting uncomfortable. I guess
Mm.
the key part here
Yes.
was the story attained by it. And if I can change my relationship with getting uncomfortable, you'll probably find that you enjoy health significantly more. If you're constantly looking for comfort, you're constantly in that microwave culture of everything's instant and easy, you're probably not as happy as you'd like to be anyway, right? And I think that's a
Mm.
real shift in seeking hard things. Usually those
Mm.
people are actually quite happy people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that contrast, isn't it,
Yeah.
to what's hard versus what's nice. I also think as well, a lot of times when I'm talking to people who are dabbling on the edge of not quite committed, they're looking for sustainable and it feels really hard. They may be doing 95%,
Hmm.
but at 95%, you don't get any of the results because you keep peeling that scab off. And so it is hard because you're doing 95% of the work, but you get none of the results for it. Whereas if you just went 10% more to that 105 or that 110, you get all the results. And suddenly, is it worth it? Probably. You put in a little bit more effort and you get all of the results.
Mm.
And I think if we think about it through that too, like dabbling is the most frustrating place to be.
Yeah.
And I have a very frank conversation with people about this now. People say, I'm just doing it all. And I'm like, it's hard, eh? It's really hard when you feel like you're doing it all
Yeah.
and you get nothing for it. So let's
Yeah.
go a little bit more and make sure you actually get
Mandy's
something
twisting
for
the knife. Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, it's a nice way to look at fat loss, right? If
Mm.
anyone on this call is trying to lose more than 10 kilos, right? You can either do it 90% and lose like 5 of those 10 kilos over the course of the next 12 months, or you can drop the hammer properly, do a proper fat loss season for 2 months, move into a strength phase, and in 6 months, you're stronger and leaner than you've ever been before, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you to do an 800-calorie plan. Like we're still
No.
fueling the body, but it means that you're actually just getting a little uncomfortable and getting the result you wanted, rather than trying to draw this thing out. And I think that's been
Yeah.
a really big shift with our clients. And I talked to a guy the other day that 50 plus kilos to lose, and I really get excited with that process if they really have dropped the hammer and they're like, I want to change this because
Mm.
frankly, 50 kilos is not something that happens overnight. That's a decade, if not a couple of decades worth of decision making that needs to
Mm.
be turned around, and a whole identity thing too, usually.
Mm.
And that's crucial that it doesn't just become a dabble in the park at 80%
Yeah.
for the next 3 years, because you just end up, ruining your metabolic rate, losing 10 kilos and putting on 20. Whereas if you
Yeah.
really chunk that down into seasons, it can be an incredibly productive time period to drop body fat and stay there.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is that you'll actually feel good through that process. Whereas if
Mm.
you dabble on that for the next 10 years and get nothing,
Yep.
you'll have these periods of feeling guilty where you go hard with restriction and make yourself feel terrible because you've got no energy and then bounce back out of it. And you've kind of got this mental game going on the whole time as well, which keeps you feeling average. Whereas,
Mm.
and this is where we come back to the season thing, which I love, is if we bring in some seasonal approach to it, not seasonal in the context of summer, winter, but in this is a season of locking in, go hard, go 110%, and then we'll pause and then we'll have some maintenance time and then we'll go again or whatever. You can stay focused and you keep that momentum because you know what you're focused on and you're just taking action. And it feels
Mm.
so much better than fart-assing around and not getting anywhere.
Yeah, look, we've talked about seasons a ton, but I'm glad it came up again. The overall issue with sustainable is that we're not getting uncomfortable because we're using this word in the wrong way. And for the drive we have towards getting people results, if the word that we try use as the long-term outcome becomes the limitation to us
Mm,
getting there, then that gets kind of irritating. So as a listener, as someone who's leaning into knowing the details, having a bit more context than just a 10-second Instagram reel, I think you understand the difference of what we're talking about here, and being able to get uncomfortable, lock in, do that season of hard so that you really achieve the outcome and you stay there. It's amazing how often we're seeing that, not just with the fat loss or a strength phase, but with these deeper autoimmune conditions, with the gut health, the thyroid, all of this stuff where you're dabbling, you're doing all the stuff, but just at 80% instead of 100. And if we just did that last little nudge to get you up 10, 20%, you would see yourself in a much different spot in 6 months, right?
mm,
And I think that ability to find the balance between, we're not saying 800 calorie plans, but we're also not saying don't change anything and you'll get a result just by thinking about it. It's somewhere in the middle. And I
yeah.
think just giving yourself that same chunk down season as you probably do in a work sense that we hear all the time. This next season is just going to be a bit busy. This next season is just going to be a little bit more locked in. If you give yourself that mindset, you're all a lot more resilient than you give yourself credit. And usually on the other side, we're yet to see someone to say that wasn't worth it.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So until next time, guys, have a little think around what season that is. One of the components we talked about in the season training about 3 weeks ago now was choose which season that is. Is it fat loss? Is it strength? Is it fitness? Is it something deeper digestively? And just focus on that. Don't try do all four of them and wonder why you're not in the right spot in 6 months. If we lock and load, give yourself that specificity, or you don't know what that specificity is, we're more than happy to help. But it gives you that ability to create some clarity around a season, and then your mind, your body will be a lot more resilient to lock and load.